Welcome to Miss V the Storyteller podcast. Today, I am very excited. Every time I do one of my episodes, I always say I'm excited because I really am. But today, I'm extra excited because I have a guest on my show and I met her probably a year ago or so. We're a part of the Alliance. And what she does for a profession, there are not a lot of us. So I was thrilled. I'm like, you have to come on the show. You have to share your story. People need to hear, especially if you have a daughter or a niece or nephew. They need to hear this episode. They need to see us and they need to hear us. So I'm not going to keep you in suspense any longer, but I am going to let Eryka share a little bit about herself. So, Eryka, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey y'all, thank you so much, Miss Fee, for inviting me to the podcast. I'm super excited, of course, to be here. My name is Eryka T. Wellborn. So I am a mom, I'm a wife. I love herbal teas. I love Nollywood movies. My family thinks I'm absolutely crazy because I can sit for hours and watch Nollywood movies. I love nature and hiking, and I also love to do belly dancing. And as a profession, I've chosen mechanical engineering, and so I am a female engineer who has the ability as well to go back into the industry and support other female engineers. So
Don't
definitely.
you all love this? How many female engineers do you know? I've met one. I met Eryka first, and then I met another one, and I'm like, oh my God, thank you, Lord, for allowing me to see it. You might hear, but when you actually see and meet them, it is like, you go, girl, and I love it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I had to have her to come on the show and share her story because you know how I feel about stories and the importance of us sharing our stories. But her story is going to be a little bit more empowering because we just don't see a lot of women um, engineering represented. And so, in order for her to get there, y'all know she didn't had to go through some stuff to be able to get there and put up with some of the foolishness of other people in her field. That's all I'm gonna say. You don't have to say nothing else. But Eryka, go ahead and share your story. You know.
Well, thank you so much for that. There are moments in our life that really define, I believe, who we are. And for me, it was ultimately starting my life over again at 40 years old. So picture this, it's 2019. I'm a single mom of three children, and I'm really just carrying the weight of everything. I'm dealing with the aftermath of a divorce and how that also cripples your finances. So I'm dealing with that as well. And I'm doing all of this and still balancing a demanding career, still leading at church, still supporting my friends. And they all have really big visions and incredible businesses that they're running. And I find myself exhausted. I'm exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually. And it was almost like Miss V, I had lost myself.
Mm.
And I was just buried under layers and layers of responsibility, people pleasing. And we'll talk
Mhm.
about that here in a second. And just surviving. So that whole survival as well. And what's interesting is that life just kind of set me up for this at a very early
Mhm.
age, right? And
Mhm.
so I grew up knowing what it was like to feel invisible, to shrink, to make myself small, to stay quiet, because that was just a way that I was able to protect myself and feel safe. I faced childhood sexual abuse on multiple occasions, as well as gang rape as a college student. And so the impact of that is that you carry this invisible weight, right? And it's something that you carry and you rarely talk about it. But, anyone that's kind of been through, trauma and complex trauma, you find that it kind of weaves itself into the
Mhm.
fabric your life, right? And so subconsciously, it's really guiding you, and it's causing you to make certain type of decisions. You see the world from a trauma lens, and these were all of the things that I was experiencing, even as a child, even as a little child. And but I knew that it was always safer for me to stay small and to kind
Mm-hmm.
of hide in plain sight, right? And I found myself at a breaking point. And at this breaking point, I made a decision. And the decision was that everything that had happened, all that had happened, that I was actually going to cause those things to work for me. So it wasn't going to continue to be against me, but it was going to work for me. And then I just slowly started beginning to nurture myself. And this is something that I had never done. I had never had any kind of experience with it, but I started in small ways. I started reconnecting with my feminine values, which is ultimately the way that God has designed you as a woman. I started reconnecting with that. I started getting out in nature, and I was doing nature walks and being out in the sun and, walking on trails. I started prioritizing my soul care. And so that looked like doing the deep inner work, that looked like my prayer time and my meditation. It was really just feeding what my soul needed and taking care of that. I started listening to what it was that I needed. If I needed to rest, I finally rested. And so if that meant I had to reschedule an appointment, I didn't feel bad about it. I finally realized that the world did not stop because I didn't show up for an appointment, right? So I started listening to what it was that I needed. And then the things that really brought me joy. So dancing was something that even as a 5-year-old girl, I got pictures of me with all of these adults around me. And I have like this ribbon tied around my head. And I have on this red dress, red and white dress, and I'm dancing. And so that's something that I love. And so slowly I just kind of started finding the pieces and the parts of me that I had buried for years. And so ultimately it was me reclaiming my identity, but also my voice. And this is important because for me, voice is so much more than what you say out loud. For
Right.
me, at least, right? For me, voice meant it was my presence, it was my imprint, it was my footprint. So literally the mark that I was leaving on the world, I had to go back and reclaim that. It was my greatness, it was my brilliance, it was everything that really encompassed who I was. And get this, I was no longer invisible.
Mm-hmm.
I was no longer silent. And the greatest part of it, and I said, the best part of it really was through the journey that I had taken, my purpose became clear and it was crystallized for me. And I knew that I wasn't the only woman in the world that was living behind the scenes, feeling
Mm-hmm.
invisible. And I knew that there was a deep call for me to really be a voice for women in engineering, female engineers
Yes, yes,
who really work in these male dominated fields where you're outnumbered to begin with,
yes.
and you may feel invisible. You may feel undervalued. And also, you might just be questioning, like, is this really where I'm supposed to be? And I really help guide them through a framework that helps them go from invisibility to influence, is what I love to call it, because I remind them, like, it's okay for you to take up space, that wherever a female engineer plants herself is where she belongs. So ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
she gets to
I
decide.
love that.
And so, what this journey has ultimately taught me is that reclaiming your voice isn't just about speaking up or speaking out, but it's really about finally stepping into you being yourself unapologetically, no strings attached, fully. And ultimately, I feel like my story is just proof that you can rise from any circumstance, Miss V.
Mm-hmm.
That there's power in you breaking the silence and choosing to shine, like choosing to be who you are, which is a voice.
Ah, I love that. Oh my God, I love it. It's so much in the story. But
Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
things I wanted to, as you were talking, something came to me. And I'll share a little bit of a story. But before I do that, my story is about me losing my voice, about
Yeah.
at the age of 6,
Yeah.
deciding to not talk until I was 23. And then there was a part of my life, fast forward, where I didn't have my full voice, where I
Mm.
was choosing not to speak up around family members and certain people
Yeah.
because that little girl who chose not to speak was still inside of me. But also out of that came the cusser outer, because of all the trauma that happened for those
Yeah.
18 years. She was ready. She was like, oh, you who
She
you
was never at
she
you, huh?
was ready. She had her gun cocked and she's ready. And so I have to balance the two of them to make
Yeah.
sure that I don't go back to one. And I definitely don't want to be the cusser outer. So I battle with that. But it's interesting. I was on my way somewhere, and it's like another part of my story is unfolding. I was on my way and my phone went off, and I looked down at my phone. I was driving. I looked down on my phone, and I got this feeling. I was like, oh God. And as I was driving, I'm like, Lord, why is it every time this particular person or these two people like text me or call me, I get this thing. I get this
Ooh,
feeling inside of
feeling.
me.
Yeah.
And I it's like, oh my God, that kind of thing. And immediately God says it's a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
I said, a trigger? What do you mean? He said, because that person has done something to you. And when you see it, that's a trigger for you. And all the stuff that's happened comes back to you. And you need to embrace that it's a trigger and
Mm-hmm.
just realize, okay, that's a trigger. Now, how am I going to walk through this trigger? What am I going to do? And I'm just driving. I'm like, Lord, this is not the time for you to be all deep. I can't write it down because I'm
Right.
driving, because when God tells you stuff, sometimes you need to write that stuff down, go back and like ponder it and have a moment. But I'm driving. But I think he did that for a reason, to make sure that I remember. And I said, oh my goodness, it is a trigger. And now, how am I going to deal with the trigger? And I had to deal with my emotions and my feelings about that person. I had to face it and confront it. And then I took my power back and I did some hard work and all that, to get myself together. But it was amazing to me that my journey, and I'm
Right.
thinking I'm finished with that. I got my voice back. I'm using my voice. But then I have triggers. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's most people do. And and sometimes you don't even know it's a trigger.
And the reason why you have triggers is because your body remembers.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yes.
Your body will never forget. Like, a part of a person that's a part of my team, and I feel like, well, I'll always keep them a part of my team, is my therapist. And so she's been around for years, right? So she was also a part of that deep soul care work that
Mhm.
I was doing. Um, but we oftentimes got an opportunity to talk about, triggers, and like your triggers, it's going to remind you, but it's all about what you do in response to,
Absolutely.
right? Because your body is keeping count of all of this that is
Mhm.
happening, whatever's happening in your life, your body is keeping count of that. And because it ultimately wants to keep you safe, it wants to keep you from re-experiencing, that trauma and that hurt and those emotions and those feelings. And so you have to definitely have a plan for when this comes up. What am I going to do?
But one of the things God also shared with me, God says the more the behavior change from the person that triggers you, the
Mm,
more the positive over a period of time, when you start to have positive experiences with that person, it would help you not to go into mode, like into that. Oh my, I don't want to talk to you. And they got the one more,
yeah.
let them say something wrong. And you won't do that. And that one of the particular persons, that's what's starting to happen, is
Mm,
the more that I encounter the person, they're showing me that they're changing behaviors.
yeah.
And that's what God was telling me, the more. So when you see the name on it, pick up the phone and give the opportunity to see, because
Mm,
if they keep treating you the same negative way, then don't I ain't gonna answer the phone, because
yeah.
God know that. But when you answer and it's different, it's starting to erase, or not erase, but it's starting to help you to see the person in a better, in a different light than the way it was before. So I just love how God operates and he
Yeah.
shows us. But I have this question, and there's some questions that I always like to ask my guests. But this particular question, when I was thinking about you and your story and all that, it jumped out at me. So this is a question I want to ask you first. What is
Mhm.
the one thing that motivates you? I mean, that extremely motivates you to help women engineers. Was it something in your past? Is it something that happened to you? What is that thing that motivates you? Is like when that thing happened, you like, I gotta help her or I need to help them.
Honestly, it's the fact that I wish I had a me when I was starting my journey. So I'm now considered more of a senior level engineer. I've been in the industry now for over 24 years. And so
Wow.
there's lines and droves of women that start the process. And even this is what the statistics and the studies show, that women, they go to a 4-year college, they get their degrees, they get into the industry, and most of them don't even make it to the 20 years. Literally, by the time they get to 20 years, 70% of the women have literally left the industry altogether. And
Wow.
so for me, I knew there was a call for me, like, what can I do to really help women, um, and what I love to call it, be unforgettable in industry, right? Leave your mark, be present and leave your mark, but also be happier, because that's also one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of the women that stay around. Ultimately, is in conflict with how they were designed as women. The way that, that you're expected to get to the top is out of a model that was designed and fashioned for a man, not
Man.
necessarily bringing in the superpowers that as women that we have in our feminine values that allow us to get from A to B in a way that really serves us. And so it's the fact that I wish there was someone like me, that there was
Yeah.
a me when I was walking through the ranks. But instead, I can recall graduating from Prairie View A&M University. I was at the top of my class. I even walked out the entire College of Engineering for commencement services and finding myself in corporate America. It was rarely anybody that looked like me. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't much support. No one wanted to support me, but instead I started hearing judgments and criticism
Yeah.
that
I'm
weren't
sure.
true, right? But, I had all of this confidence coming out of, this university and getting into corporate America, and my experience basically told me that I was not prepared. I was not
Wow.
prepared for what that transition and what the reality really was for women in the industry. And so that meant for the first 5 years of my career, Miss V, I failed miserably.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until I made a decision that I was going to be the one to take control of my career, but I was also going to hold my leadership accountable for supporting me, because those support systems were not in place to help me during that time.
Wow. You
So
know,
all of that feeds into what's really fueling me to support women in engineering and in STEM.
I love that. I love your answer to that because that is a part, that is why sharing your story is so important.
Mhm.
Because if there is a woman out there who's even thinking about, or maybe they have a daughter who's thinking about going into engineer, understanding that, first of all, now you have someone out there that you can connect with and somebody that will help you.
Yes.
And also because if you don't share your story, if you don't talk about it, you don't get it out in the world, oftentimes people are like, well, that's not for women. Don't go into that field, because it's like, no, 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 no. We have women out there. We have women entrepreneurs out there. And when you share your story, it gets out. Just like I shared earlier before, I met another one and I was shocked. I was like, oh my goodness, I just met another one. And as her and I began to talk, I'm like, see, this is why more people need to get out. They need to share their stories and they need to tell people, I am here. If you need, if you even thinking about it, if you have anyone think about, contact me because I can tell you. And then the part you said about for the first 5 years, some people come out of college and think, oh my God, this is going to be absolutely wonderful. It's going to be great. I'm gonna, and then 5 years in, you like, I hate this. I don't want to be a part of this. But having a support system, somebody you can go to, is amazing. And I commend you for having that heart to go and to help people and to be the person you wish you had. Now, I have another question for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want you to think back to those times in your life that built that strong Eryka that we see before us. When you look back over those years of things that you had to go through in order to create you, because our past creates who we are right now,
Mhm.
what is the biggest lesson, that one lesson that you've always taken with you, your once you came out of it and you went into, your life and you start making decisions? What is that one thing? For me, that one thing that I always take with me: do never to lose your voice to anyone. Say what you need to say, whether they want to hear it or not. They have a right not to listen, just like you have a right to say it. Let them walk away, you still say it. So mine is never lose your voice. You can walk away. I'll talk to the wall, but I'm gonna get it out. So what was that one? What is that thing? That lesson that you've learned from back way
Mhm.
back then.
Mhm. For me, it would be you decide. The
Ooh,
moment you say yes, your experience shifts.
I love that.
It's always about you making a decision. And even knowing that if you make a decision and it doesn't necessarily pan out the way that you expected it, you can always make another decision.
Yes. Ooh.
So it's you decide, because
Oh,
the moment you say yes, that's when things will shift. That experience will shift.
it's so simple.
Mhm.
But sometimes we make it hard because, oftentimes people don't like to make decisions. And that is a decision. When you don't make a decision, it is a decision. Because
Mhm.
sometimes I know, I'll be like, look, Lord, I don't, look, you tell me what to do. That way I know it's right. Because if I have to decide, I'm choosing to do nothing because
Oh
I
yeah.
I don't want to be wrong.
Mhm.
And I have one more question for you before, because I want to give you an opportunity to tell anyone that's out there where they can contact you. And listen to me, you guys. Listen, if you know someone, a girl, a teenager, someone in college, anyone that's even thinking about becoming an engineer, I want you all to show them this video. I mean, show them this episode to see that there are women out there, and Eryka is representing one. But this real question is, it's just an easy breezy one. What
Mhm.
are you looking for most in 2025?
Ooh. So in 2025, so I've begun kind of developing what my plan looks like, and I'm being intentional. About 2 months for 2025 are just going to be rest months, right? It's going to
Ooh,
be me really incorporating what I need to take care of my soul. There's probably not going to be a whole lot of reflection time because that takes away energy as well. But it's going to be, that time of rest. Actually, at the beginning of this year, I got married, and so
yes.
In January, and so January for us is going to be a rest month because I get to celebrate not only my 1 year anniversary with my husband Otis, but I also get to celebrate my birthday because we basically,
Yeah.
my birthday is on the 25th and anniversary is on the 28th. So definitely incorporating the rest. And then we're just going to be doing things with, I have the unforgettable engineer community. Literally, I've built a brand around being unforgettable and being happier. And so, what I'm looking to do with the unforgettable engineer community next year is, to get as many women into that
Mm,
space because it's really It's a safe space is what I call it. It's a safe space for women to come. Of course, there's trainings. There's individuals who you'll be able to ask questions and just really be in community. And we're going to be doing activities as well that's going to allow you to reconnect, just as I talked about, reconnecting with your feminine values so that you can really lead with your unique design. And so I'm most excited about that. Like our family, we got things planned to do with our families, trips to take. Yeah, and just growing the business and creating that space for female engineers to come and just really get what they need that's going to help them transition from being and feeling invisible to really stepping into their influence, because the industry needs you. And so
Yes,
have to be visible. And so whatever that means, in order for us to get the respect that we need and that recognition, then the unforgettable engineer community is there to support you. And even today, if you want to go out, I have a pretty large video library on YouTube today. There's tons of videos. Go and look at those videos and get what you need. As we're talking about building confidence and we're talking about what influence looks like, and I'm talking to you about how do you get paid your worth, because we're in an
yeah,
industry where you can get paid incredibly good money, but there's still a disparity between how men are paid and how women are paid, and even
absolutely.
between a black woman and a white woman. And
And
so
that's the truth.
uh,
Amen.
yeah, and so I got videos out there, to connect. And even if you find me, so you can go to the unforgettable engineer.com, and
Okay.
that'll bring you to the community. But you can also go to my website, erykatjohnson.com. And I have a blog area where I got a ton of posts there, blog articles, but it's all situated to really support you on your journey. And of course, too, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm typically on LinkedIn in that space at Eryka T Johnson as well. And I have blog articles that's there, but it's all about supporting. And there's so much free stuff that I've created. Like there's no reason not to get what you need, right? So yeah.
Yeah, great. You know what? As you were talking, I'm like, she has a library. So just go to the library
Yes,
and get what you need
yes,
to help you. And it's not just about, and it sounds like it's not just about geared towards engineering, women engineers in engineering, but also about as women, as just women, period. There's things that we can learn. So I want you guys, if you, for even you, to go over, go to the library, go to Eryka's library, and what is the name of the Unforgettable Engineer?
yes.com. That's the
Dot com.
community.
I
Yeah.
want us to support her, but mainly I really want to get this out so that there are options for women that they just turn away from because they don't think, well, I don't know any women that way, so I'm just going to turn around. No, no, no. We have some women, so please. And I also need you all to push that thumbs up button if you're on YouTube. There's a push that thumb button, and that way the algorithm, because now we're going into AI and all that, the algorithm will push out these stories and get them into more people's threads on their phones and all that. So please, let's go and be supportive of Eryka. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your story. And I just loved you for being an engineer. Look at God putting you in the earth for to do something different.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And what's interesting is initially I wanted to be a lawyer until I got
Wow.
exposed to a female engineer. I had never seen one before. Didn't even know
Yes.
about engineering because I grew up in a really rural town that was less than 5,000 people. So exposure matters.
It really does. So thank you again for being here.
Same.